Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 8th annual DrupalCamp LA. I remember when I first volunteered back in 2007 when we held the DrupalCamp in LA for the first time at the AOL building. How many here attended the first one in 2007? It's like literally a handful of us. Yeah, I remember you guys. I know you guys. And then luckily, the second year was actually the first of basically what you see today. We actually, in 2008, were able to get the city of Los Angeles to work with us and essentially get us to LA Convention Center. So 2008 was a big deal. How many here went to that one? See, the number starts to grow. And then from there on, basically, we've been here at UC Irvine. So real quick, let's give John Romine a great thank you. You know, not just John doing a great job in the background and in front, as you've seen, but really, you know, this is one of the most comfortable venues I think I've been at for camps. You know, all camps are great, but John, you do a great job. Thank you so much. And we praise John a lot because he does a lot of the hard work, and we support him and we do what we can. But really, there's a lot of people that are involved. So, you know, here's a list of them. One of the biggest ones that I really do want to call out, of course, a lot of these names, if you've been to DrupalCamp or any of the LA Drupal or OC Drupal meetings, these are names that are common. But the last three lines, I really want to make a call out to William Strada and Oleg Baranovsky from LA and OC PHP. This year is the first time we've done a PHP mini camp inside DrupalCamp. So for us, this is an important thing that we've actually been striving for and trying to design in our camp for quite some time. So I really would love all of us to give a warm thank you to those teams for getting the PHP site together. And of course, all the volunteers and presenters, you know, we do thank you, but really, you know, we set this up and it is you who all make it happen, because without your presentations, we would not have the quality of an event that we've had for the last 8 years. And again, we are only 2 years away from, you know, our 10th anniversary of this event. So, you know, expect something, you know, big, because we're always making the event better and better. Wouldn't you say? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The sponsors, hey, those are my friends you're laughing at. So, all right, the sponsors, you know, they yes, they give money, yes, they support the event, but this year especially, and every year really, we get a lot of engagement from our sponsors. They bring their staff out, like you see in the booths, and they promote themselves, but they also do presentations. And this year, I've seen quite a big chunk of presentations come from our sponsors directly. So one, I would really love to thank all levels of sponsors, even the individuals themselves. So let's please visit their booths in between the sessions. Even if you are not one of their customers for whatever it is they're selling or doing, please just say thank you for sponsoring. Just show your appreciation. You could do it in a tweet. You could do it in person. But you know, these are your peers. So go say hi, you know, give them a little bit of love. We appreciate it. Also, real quick, because I think there's only one more slide after this, right? So before I leave this slide, I want to point out that this keynote is actually being broadcast on air right now, live on our YouTube channel. So for those that don't know, we've been recording pretty much every session for the last several years that we've been with UCI. Our official YouTube channel has every video that we've recorded from the camps all previous years. We have hundreds of videos. There have been tens of thousands of minutes watched when we put up the YouTube channel. It's free to subscribe. So if you miss a session because you're like, wow, there's like 2 or 4 good sessions at the same time, I can't get to them, don't worry, we're recording them. We're trying. Not every single one will be, but we do our best. And we will publish them on YouTube. Also, the campsite has all the information to watch the videos right away and download them if you want. But right now, we are broadcasting. We do try to give you guys stuff to digest and learn more at home and at work. And this is a thing that LA Drupal does constantly. So, you know, thank you to everybody who supports the group by doing presentations, by giving quality community efforts. And with that in mind, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, an excellent, high-quality community person, Jen Lampton. So before you clap, we got to go through this real quick. So she's been involved with Drupal since '06. For those that are deep in Drupal, she's actually the founding forker behind Backdrop, which is you know, a variant of Drupal. So she's going to get into a bunch of stuff that she's prepared to basically, you know, let us know that we're all doing a good job. Beginners, I know you guys are feeling a little bit new still and learning stuff out. Don't worry. Everybody that is sitting right in front of you, you know, or at another session was in your seat before. They were in your place. So don't worry. We're here. There's a lot of stuff online. The communities are great. I mean, the hallway and the hallway conversations are always awesome. How many had a good talk during lunch, right? Yeah. So I mean, just that's the community. That's how it is. So we love that you enjoy the camp. We love that you guys are great community people online. You know, do the same in your work. Share the videos we make. Share the presentation. Share your enthusiasm, your interest. This is all because of a community effort. The event and the software and the platform. Okay, it's not just Drupal. It's everything that is built on PHP. PHP itself, open source. Okay, this is a Drupal camp, but we're all technology people here. So I know what you guys are looking for. You guys are looking to learn. You guys are looking to share. And that's wonderful because I feel the same in my heart, and I know you guys do too. So with that, I'm not going to go through the whole slide because I'm sure some of you felt like reading it yourself. Let's give a wonderful, warm welcome to Jen Lampton.
All right. So before I get started, can I get a quick poll of the room? How many of you are here because of Drupal? Okay, and I know this camp is also a combination of the SoCal PHP meetup group. Is there anyone here who came to this camp because of that group? That's good. There's like 10 of you. Okay, so this talk is going to be fairly low level. It's kind of intro, like everybody here knows what PHP is, obviously, but I'm going to do a little bit kind of into not only what PHP is, but what it means to me personally, a little bit of history of how I got here, and why that I think that it rocks. So before I get too deep into this, I want to specify that I am not an expert at PHP. I use PHP every day, but I also spend a lot of time on php.net looking up argument order for like stir, trying to figure out how things work in different versions of PHP. Sometimes you get weird errors when you're running on different servers, and you're like, oh, PHP changed that. I'm not an expert in PHP. I am a user of PHP, and I've been a user for PHP for 10 years that I remember, and probably sometime before that when I wasn't actually paying attention. So this is kind of just my experience with PHP, and you know, because I think it rocks. I'm really passionate about PHP for a lot of reasons. The biggest one is that I get to do what I love every day. And getting to work in a way that makes you happy is like playing while you're working, and I feel like there's a bunch of people in the world that should get to have that experience, and I get that experience through using PHP. So PHP today stands for a PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. Now, when it was originally written, it stood for Personal Homepage, but it was cleverly backronymed more recently when people realized that PHP did more than personal homepages. But Hypertext Preprocessor, though it probably means something to everyone in this room, doesn't necessarily mean anything to like my mom or people who aren't very familiar with it. So what does that mean? PHP was intended for helping people build dynamic pages. So in the world of the internet, HTML is static, right? Pages that are delivered to your browser usually don't change. And if you come to working in the web through writing HTML, you'll eventually come to a point where you're like, wow, I wish I could insert a variable, or I wish that I could write a little loop, or I wish that I could include something magically on one page but not on another. And pre-processing gives us the ability to do that. So to me, PHP is magic. It lets you do all of that stuff that you weren't able to do in HTML before that HTML gets delivered to a browser. So that's what I tell my mom. I work with magic. PHP is a scripting language. What does that mean? that means that it happens at runtime. It doesn't need to be compiled. If you take a look at something like Java, it's code that needs to be compiled, and then Java has this companion JavaScript that doesn't. And what that means is that it lets you do things quickly. You don't have to write a bunch of code and then put it all together and then see if it works. If you can take out that step in the middle, write the code, and see if it works, that makes everything go really fast, right? So my workflow given during a day is, write some code and you just reload your browser. And if you're running PHP locally, you can just see the changes instantly, and you have this really great feedback loop. It's like just writing HTML, right? You write the HTML and you refresh the browser. You can do the same thing with PHP. And that saves me a bunch of time as a developer, which I love, and it saves my clients a bunch of money. And most of my clients are not big clients with lots of money. They're little people who just need a website, or they're nonprofits, or they're people who are just trying to get something done, and they want to see it fast too. So I feel like that benefits all of us. Unfortunately, PHP has kind of a bad reputation. If you go and talk to any of those real developers, they kind of look down their nose at you when they find out you work in PHP, and they're like, oh, you use PHP, I'm so sorry. And I feel like, that's fine up to a point, but I like what I do, and I wish that I wasn't sneered at all the time by those real developers. So I'd like to debunk a couple of these myths about PHP. One of them is that all these people using real languages think that PHP doesn't have modern features. They think that it's still kind of set in the past. Another one is they always think it's not as good at whatever it is that they're using. And a third one is they say that there's so much bad code written in PHP. So in terms of outdated language features, that was true maybe in PHP 4 and before. But since PHP 5, it's modernized a lot, and it's gotten a lot of the modern language patterns that all of these other languages have, because PHP has the ability to adapt. And if you talk to a real PHP expert, Larry Garfield is a great one, they can debunk all of the more technical arguments that people have with PHP about saying, oh no, it does do everything the way modern languages do, and the things that it doesn't do now, it's working to solve in the future. So PHP is not necessarily a thing of the past anymore. It has modernized. It just has kind of the reputation left over from when it used to be less sophisticated. And depending on which developers you're talking to, they'll tell you that PHP isn't good at whatever it is that they're working on. So PHP is not as good as Ruby when you talk to a Ruby developer, but if you're not talking to a Ruby developer, you're talking to a Python developer, guess what? It's not as good as Python. Well, I happen to think that, I like PHP a lot because I use PHP, and they probably like Python because they use Python, and Ruby because they use Ruby, and whatever. Everyone's going to have their own opinion about which language is best, or what better means, or what as good as actually means. But it's always going to be a matter of opinion, and I have my own. And at the end of the day, there are things that are better that don't win, right? Does it really matter if it's better if it can get the job done? So people say that a lot of bad code is written in PHP. Well, I think the bigger underlying issue here is that just a lot of bad code is written. And as it turns out, there is code all around us. There's code that runs the web. We all know about that. There's code that runs in your computers that you're using to write the code that runs the web. There's code that runs in your phone. There's code that runs in your oven. There's code that runs in your refrigerator. There's code everywhere. And most of the time, we just don't get to see it. But PHP is the bad code you can see. And so PHP gets a reputation for being a place where people write bad code because they can see the code. There's a lot of it shared on the internet. I'm guilty of this too. Like when I was really new to Drupal, there used to be this section on Drupal.org called like PHP snippets. And I would write some code and I would get something done and I'd be like, this is awesome. And I'd post a PHP snippet. And these are like my earliest posts on Drupal. If I go back now and look at them, I'm like, oh God, nobody should ever use this. This is horrible. But it's there. It's on the internet. And it's old. And it's fine. That's how things work. It's in the open. People can see it. It's bad. But I also like to point out that bad code is often first code, right? Like when you are able to use a tool and you solve your problem and you are so excited that that problem is solved and you want to share that solution with someone, you have something like PHP code, you have a place where you can post it, you're going to put it up and be like, look what I did, this is great. But that was my first try. Like I would not solve that problem now in the same way 10 years later. So that was my first code. It was bad code, and that's fine. And I think that that is true, especially in PHP, because people learn to code in PHP. For me, I learned to code in other languages, but I learned to solve problems in PHP. The coding I did in other languages was like in school, and it doesn't really apply to the real world. And I got into it in PHP because it was the easiest way to solve the problems that I was facing. So guess what? PHP can be easy. And I think that that's really great. There's a beauty to having something that can be simple and be really powerful at the same time. So PHP can do a lot of really complicated stuff. It's got all these modern language patterns and everything now, but it hasn't sacrificed the ease. So as a beginner, you can still do something really straightforward, and it doesn't get messy because of the stuff that more advanced people can do with it. It has a really common syntax. So if anyone who has looked at other types of code before comes to PHP, they'll be able to recognize it, read it, understand it, and work with it pretty easily. And I've worked with a bunch of people who haven't used any language before, and it's written in a way that you can kind of read it top to bottom and understand what it's doing, which I think is really great. It also happens to have some really great documentation online, some not so great documentation online, but it's pretty easy for people to read and understand this code in a way that's kind of intuitive to most people, which is great. And it's also really suitable as a beginning point. So I want to do something on the web. Where should I start? PHP is the easiest way, maybe my bias there, to get new people involved in working on the web. And I think that's really important because we live in a time right now that is really cool as far as technology is going on. We've got so much stuff happening on the web, and we don't even know where the web is going, but there's so much good stuff. And even if you step outside of the web and say, what is the world that we live in? We've got like hover motorcycles around the corner. We've got drones flying overhead. Like everything is so cool right now. And it all depends on tech. And we need a lot of developers to solve all these problems. And there aren't enough developers in the world. And I think that giving people a really easy on-ramp, like, oh, you want to tinker with something on the web, that's fine. Here's a really easy language, PHP. Just get them in the door. We can teach them the rest later. We just need more developers, and PHP is a great tool to get people to do that because it's easy. Another thing that's really great is that PHP is almost universally supported. So you have a Mac, you have a PC, you have a Windows machine, you want to do something, you can. There are tools that will let you write that code on that computer, which makes it great for beginners too, because they don't need to worry about setting up some complicated environment in order to get it going. It also runs on almost all servers. So whether you're paying for a really simple hosting account from some provider, PHP is probably bundled and already there for you. Whether you're setting up your own server, it's really easy to get packages and install them. PHP works with everything. So it makes it really easy to use that as a common platform, a common solution that can work for anyone. It also works with lots of different databases. So as you get a little bit deeper into what you're doing with the code, you can find you can hook it to a bunch of different stuff. So whatever your need is on the back end, you can use PHP in the middle. And I think that that is great because it gives us a common language to communicate on, even between different projects. And PHP is open source. And this is the thing that is probably most exciting to me because I love open source. Anyone can look inside PHP, not just the code written with PHP, but PHP itself, and they can see how it works. And when anyone can see the code, anyone can find problems with the code, and anyone can fix the code, and it makes the process of changing things much faster. So open source is important. PHP is also readily available for anyone. So if you need to go download and install it, you can grab it, you can put it wherever you want. Anyone can use it. There's no restrictions, which means that anyone can do whatever they want with it. There's lots of things you can do with it. So empowering people is good. And PHP is free. So not only can anyone go grab it, but there's no cost associated with it. And free software also means that more people can do more faster. You don't have to worry about getting approval for stuff. You don't have to have any kind of institution in order to do it. You can just whip something up, and you can try and solicit change or solicit money, whatever it is you're doing on the internet. And I also think that when people can see what other people are doing, it makes innovation happen faster. So, oh, that's a good idea. I want to try an iteration on it. That's a good idea. I want to try an iteration on that. And having all of this information open and out there means that people will move faster. And in this world where we have technology everywhere, we need to move fast. We need to innovate fast. We need to make things better. We need to do whatever. And having an open insight into all of that is great. So doing that on the project level is good. Doing that on the code level is even better. And in making PHP open source too, also really great. And PHP itself was born of the open source software movement, and it is also one of the front runners in it. So thank you, PHP. So PHP can be easy, but can it solve hard problems too? Turns out yes. There's a whole bunch of PHP template engines that are out there. Some of these you probably heard of, some of them you haven't. And I was doing research for this, I found out that there's a whole lot more stuff that's happened in PHP since the last time I was evaluating template engines. And it's so great that people can just say, oh, you know, I don't like that one, I'll create my own, and then it becomes a thing. So there's a lot of great things that projects out there that create templates that you can use to create your HTML. So this is kind of at the highest level of the magic that PHP does, which is really great. There's also a bunch of frameworks that are made in PHP for PHP of PHP. And these are things where if you like writing your own code, but you don't write all your own code, you can just snap some pieces together. There are a ton of these out there too. A lot of great stuff going on in the world of PHP. And obviously CMSs that use PHP. We are all here because we're fans of Drupal. There's a whole bunch of other open source PHP CMSs. There's a whole bunch of PHP CMSs that aren't open source. There's a whole bunch of work going on in this space. And everybody kind of solving the same problem in different ways with the same tools, which I think gives us a lot of stuff to learn from, which is great. PHP also happens to run the largest social network on the internet. They've done a bunch of cool stuff with PHP and Facebook in order to make it a little better at doing that job. But it, you know, for a language that's not as good as some of the others, I think it's got a pretty good history here doing some cool stuff. PHP also happens to run the biggest blogging system on the web. So again, for a language that's not as good as all the others, it seems to be putting everyone else to shame in terms of personal blogging. And we're all here because we love Drupal, or at least all of us except for those 10. So it runs our favorite CMS too, and so I think we need to appreciate it for that. As it turns out, if you measure all of the sites on the internet, the ones that you can measure, and see which ones are running PHP, we have determined that 80% of the internet is actually running PHP. So that's a pretty staggering statistic in terms of which language might actually be winning. There's of course a bunch of stuff that we can't measure and a bunch of stuff that, you know, we don't know. It's kind of a black box. We can't see what it's made of. But of the stuff we can measure, 80% is a pretty good figure. So PHP can do pretty much anything. It's great for that first program where all you need to do is output a variable. It's great for that first system where you want to come up with some way to assemble your HTML pages that's a little bit more efficient than writing them all out. You can include different things. You can create a template engine. You can have that flip magically based on which page you're on or who's looking at it or whatever you want. It can also be used to build really complicated solutions. Like Drupal 8 runs on a Symfony framework at the bottom. It runs on the Twig template engine at the top. It's got all of this Drupal magic in the middle. And it's using all of these modern design patterns that are in PHP now. And I think that it's important for us to remember that whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it with PHP. And that's why PHP is running 80% of the internet. There are very few problems that can't be solved with PHP these days. So when you're in that position where somebody's real developer is looking down their nose at you saying, oh, you do PHP, just inside remember all of the great things that PHP has done for you and for all of the internet at large, and just remember that it works for everyone. So that's all I have. So I guess I don't know if anyone has any questions. I can't answer anything super technical about PHP, obviously, but yes.
Okay, I see it said you were a founding forker. Could you tell us what a founding forker is?
So in the world of open source, which I'm obviously very passionate about, there's this idea that if you can see the code, you can also do whatever you want with it. Like take it all and move it off somewhere else. So a fork in an open source project is where the code splits and goes two different directions. In the recent history of Drupal, when Drupal 8 has been under development, me and Nate decided to fork the project and create something that is more similar to Drupal 7. So we are founding forkers of a new software project called BackdropCMS. Yes?
What would be a good place to start learning PHP?
A good place to start learning. Well, so I like people to learn with an actual use case. I spend a lot of time doing training development, and so I would say pick a problem that you want to solve, install whatever you need in order to run PHP locally, and just try it. PHP has a lot of really great documentation. There's a site that I can put a link up to on the slide if you want that gives you some super simple examples of how to write like print statements, loops, like all of the most basic things you need in PHP. And if you have a specific use case you're trying to solve, you can say, oh, here I need to output a variable. Here's the information on how to output a variable. So I would say start with a use case and then walk through a tutorial that helps you get towards your result. Yes.
Who do you think the audience would be for BackdropCMS?
So
Drupal 8? Obviously, it's a big departure.
We actually have a talk scheduled tomorrow specifically about Backdrop where we're going to address a lot of the kind of bigger questions around that. So maybe you should come to that talk, and then if it's not answered in that, we can talk to it after that. Yes?
Have you seen any statistics about trending languages and current trends in the number of projects per given language and how that's playing out?
So the question was, had I seen any statistics on trending languages, modern new languages, and seeing how many projects are developed in each one and how that's playing out for PHP? I haven't seen any of those statistics. I have a feeling that most of the projects that are driving the 80% of the internet figure are older projects, things like WordPress and Drupal that have been around for a while. But it would be interesting to see what the kind of hot new things are and which languages they're developed in. Yes?
Do you know any specific resources or websites for teaching kids like middle school, high school?
So I don't know anything offhand, but as I was doing research for this talk, I did stumble across, I was Googling like PHP beginners, and there are a whole bunch of sites geared specifically towards high school students learning PHP. I don't know about younger than that. I know there's a bunch of really cool applications that are getting really young kids into just programming concepts in general, but I don't know offhand what any of those resources might be. Yes? I looked it up on the internet. So if you start on the PHP Wikipedia page, they have a bunch of citations as to where that came from. The internet is the source of everything. Yes?
Do you also use JavaScript at all?
Yes.
How does that work?
So PHP is a scripting language, but it still runs on the back end of your site. So it's something that happens before the HTML is printed to the page. And JavaScript sits on the front end of your site. So after the HTML is printed on the page, JavaScript can do it. So I use them in conjunction all the time. Drupal, which is what I do most of, comes with jQuery, which is a version of JavaScript that lets you do a whole bunch of stuff out of the box, which is really great. Before Drupal, I used to write my own, like when it was actually JavaScript and not jQuery, which is magical and new and amazing. And I still use them a lot in conjunction because they solved different problems, one on the back, one on the front, but kind of in the same syntax, which is handy. And yeah, they work great together. All right, well, that looks like all the questions. So I hope you all really enjoy the rest of your DrupalCamp/PHP meetup, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Jen. She did a great job, didn't she? You get to see more of her tomorrow, 10 a.m., and her backdrop session. So if you're coming tomorrow, raise of hands. How many are showing up for Sunday? Cool. Quick show of hands. Who are not maybe going to come to Sunday, but they know they will now? One guy. All right. All right. We're glad to convert you. My funnel worked. Thank you. Okay. So tomorrow she's doing backdrop at 10 a.m., but next session here is going to be Hip Hop VM for PHP. With the Facebook platform. Yep, we got a rockin', rockin' sign. So she's ready to go. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody again. And I know, Yeah, volunteers, thank you. Oh, the announcement. All right, yeah. See, you threw me off, Steve. Your beautiful voice on that video just has me, yeah, dude, I'm like sparkle-eyed right now. So, okay, sorry, I'm having fun. Okay, so volunteers, we are looking for a couple people that want to help with the help desk, which is basically pointing people to rooms, answering some basic questions. If anybody would like to give up a half hour or an hour of their time, maybe it's in between a slot that you're just not really going to go to a session, or there's too many good ones and you just, you know, you're done with it and you're just like, I'm going to stay here petrified. Why don't you do it at the volunteer booth and help us out for a little bit? It's very casual, very easy stuff. No PHP code need to write, anything like that. So no modules. So that'll be great. Again, the next session right after this is going to be the Hip Hop VM, Facebook, PHP. Awesome, pretty cool topic. Jen, again, is tomorrow, 10 o'clock, BackdropCMS. And we have a whole slew of stuff. As you guys know, we'll do one more session set right now, and then we have a quick break for the group photo. We would love every single one of you out there with us. Again, it's going to be right outside, right near the registration booth, okay? Good? Good? Yeah. Are we enjoying this? Yeah. Wonderful. Any last minutes? That's it. Okay, so I'm supposed to let you guys go, but if you're going to, you know, linger a little bit, make sure you write an extra module. We need more modules, right? No? Oh, I was so sorry. No more modules. But fix a module. So, thank you so much, everybody. You have a great camp.